Could you talk about the influence of David Hume on your thought? I know you've just recently reread some of his books.
I have. Oh, what do you want me to talk about?
Well, what kind of inspiration do you take from David Hume? I think you mentioned you interpreting
Well,
him
I
as a
you know
virtue
I
ethicist.
haven't finished reading, but I've begun reading his what they now think is his most important book, which is the one he personally hated
Oh,
because it didn't impact the public at all.
so that's the first major one.
Yeah, it's a treatise of human nature. And actually, I was somewhat disappointed. I mean, I haven't read that whole thing, but I've read the first half, which is about his theory of knowledge. And the funny thing is, I think he's made some big mistakes in that. I may have talked to you about this already.
Yeah, what are those
Um,
mistakes?
he thinks that uh, the basic unit of knowledge is looking at something. In other words, an immediate impression. And he says you can't take that for real because it's your brain that's doing it, and there's no way of independently confirming that what your brain is thinking about is what you're seeing in terms of what's out there. So it's all indirect. So he has a number of deductions from that. The trouble is, after he gets through all of his deductions, he comes to the famous confessional, which you may have talked about, in which he says, in effect, he's so confused that he can't distinguish truth from falsity.
Is that at the very end of the book, or where
No,
is it?
no, it's at the end of part one.
I
There's
see.
three parts to the book. The first part is the longest one, and he goes through all these things. It's very similar to the logical positivists.
Hmm.
In fact, I think if he hadn't written that book, logical positivism wouldn't have existed.
And I guess when Bertrand Russell is talking about sense data, he's also taking inspiration from David Hume, probably.
Well, very likely.
Okay.
He has a high opinion of Hume.
Was Descartes before or after Hume? Like, is Hume partly answering Descartes' arguments about certain knowledge?
Um, I don't think Hume refers to Descartes at all.
Okay,
Um, I mean, intuitively, he doesn't like Descartes' arguments because
sure.
Descartes, first of all, he deduces the existence of God.
Yeah.
That's a fundamental point of his arguments, Descartes, that is, and he keeps following up from there. So I think he's completely screwy.
Okay.
But yeah, but as I say, after David Hume says things like it's obvious and that we have to do this and that and that and that and that, then he comes to the end after all of his prime deductions that he can't distinguish truth from falsity.
Mm.
So in effect, he's confessing that all that he's done up to that point is fallacious in some
Mm.
sense or other. So, but I'm starting on the. So that's the first book of his treatise of human nature. The second one is called On the Emotions, and the third one is called On Morals. So I find that more interesting, but I haven't really gotten into that.
I know.
So in some sense or other, it somewhat diminishes my admiration for Hume.
Is your problem with the first part that it's sort of self contradictory? Is that what you're saying the mistake is?
Well, I mean, if he had gone through that, and he positively affirms that this is what we can deduce from what he's talking about, and he goes on and on and on, and then finally he confesses, I don't know what truth is. I don't know how to find truth from falsity or distinguishing these two. So obviously he's saying there must have been something wrong with the way I was proceeding. And I think the answer is that there's another source of information which he has ignored entirely.
What's that?
Intuition. In other words, I think a lot of this comes from our deduction, our genetic system, because Hume itself has had nothing to do or understand that concept, but he understood heredity certainly, but he rejected that out of hand. So it's not perception; it's coming from this, and we don't know if it's true or false. In other words, he's starting from an extreme skeptical position.
Sure.
And he stayed a skeptic for the rest of his life, but what he called mitigated skepticism rather than absolute skepticism. In fact, he had some arguments against the Greek skeptics, which were absolute. So. Yeah, but I still think Hume is my favorite philosopher because he did much better. What he did basically is rewrite the treatise of human nature in a way that made more sense to the general public and did make an impression. So he has inquiry concerning, let's see, what was it? Yeah, he has three inquiries basically, and he divided his original book into three more palatable pieces. Inquiry concerning, I forget what it was.
Human understanding.
What?
Human understanding.
Yes, inquiry concerning human understanding was the first one, and what would the second one be? And the third one. Oh, the third one is inquiry concerning the principles of morals, matching the last third of his book. And the second one, I forgot what that's about. And he added some stuff that he had originally wanted to put into the first edition, but just as well he didn't. Like his essay on miracles is in that. I think that human understanding, and what he's doing is making a counter argument against the existence of miracles, because he said people, first of all, people's inferences are not dependable, and they copy from each other, and we all know that miracles can't exist. He's saying he has a pretty good idea, and but it's not clear. I mean, he talks about, let's say, some Indian prince that's in India who had no experience of ice, for example. Would he believe that the water that he treads upon can turn into something so solid that you can walk on it? So he gives that suggestion, but he never indicates why the Indian prince would be wrong in that making that inference.
Oh, being
there's
skeptical.
No such thing as ice. So what can you do? I mean, I still think overall, I think Hume does quite well, and. I think you have to balance him off a little. There's Aristotle, whom I have most respect for, except for Hume himself. And Aristotle, you could say, is the common sense philosopher. So, well, I don't know. What else do you want me to say?